welcome to the deep dive. You sent us some really fascinating stuff about UFO encounters in the Korean DMZ,
Yeah,
and we are so ready to dig into this.
absolutely. I think we can unearth some truly insightful findings here.
Okay, so full disclosure, we are obsessed with this topic.
Oh yeah, it's the unexpected nature of it all, right? You have this heavily militarized zone, this global symbol of tension, and then, you have these reports of something completely otherworldly.
Yeah, it's like what, UFOs in the DMZ.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what comes to mind when you think about that area.
No, it really makes you wonder what's going on beneath the surface. So for those who might not be totally familiar with the Korean DMZ, can you set the stage for us?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine like a strip of land about 160 miles long and 2.5 miles wide, slicing right through the Korean peninsula.
Wow.
It's essentially a buffer zone
Okay.
that was created after the Korean War to keep North and South Korea separate. It's a constant reminder that the conflict never really ended.
And that unresolved tension, I imagine that really creates a palpable atmosphere.
Oh, absolutely.
It's steeped in history,
Oh, wait.
but also this lingering sense of unease. You've got soldiers on both sides constantly on high alert, watching for any sign of aggression.
Right, and that's what makes the UFO reports all the more fascinating. We're not talking about some remote desert area. This is a zone under constant military surveillance.
Exactly. And it's not just a recent phenomenon either.
Oh.
We're talking about reports going back decades to the 1950s during the Korean War itself.
Wow.
There are accounts from soldiers on both sides witnessing strange lights and objects in the sky.
So this suggests a pattern then, not just isolated incidents.
It definitely adds another layer to the mystery. And to make things even more intriguing, these aren't just your average light-in-the-sky sightings.
Right.
One of the most well-documented cases happened in 1980 when a group of South Korean soldiers reported seeing a metallic disc-shaped object hovering over the DMZ.
This sighting aligns with what ufologists often classify as a close encounter of the second kind, involving a physical object and even electromagnetic effects on the environment. Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
It really does.
So let's talk about some other eyewitness accounts.
Yeah.
What are some of the details that really make these stories stand out? What's going to stick with our listener?
One account that I found particularly chilling comes from a former South Korean soldier.
Okay.
He describes being on patrol near the DMZ when he and his fellow soldiers witnessed this large glowing object in the sky, and it suddenly shot off at an incredible speed, something he'd never seen before. He spoke about the overwhelming sense of awe and even fear that he and the other soldiers felt.
You can almost feel the adrenaline rush just hearing about it.
Yeah.
Imagine yourself in that soldier's boots, seeing something move at impossible speeds.
Yeah.
What would you report? How would that change your perspective?
Absolutely, and we have similar accounts from other military personnel, civilians living near the DMZ, even some government officials. They all describe these inexplicable lights, objects maneuvering in ways that defy conventional explanation.
So we've got multiple witnesses, credible sources, and consistent details. It definitely makes you wonder what's really happening up there. But what about the official response? How have the governments of North and South Korea reacted to these reports?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting, because this isn't just any random UFO hotspot. We're talking about a highly sensitive geopolitical zone. The responses from both sides have been, shall we say, intriguing.
So is there an official line? Are they dismissing these sightings as hoaxes, or is there some acknowledgement that something unusual might be happening?
It's a mixed bag, really. Some officials just flat out dismiss the sightings, attributing them to misidentified aircraft or weather phenomena. But then you have others who are calling for investigations, admitting that there might be something more to these reports than meets the eye.
It seems like officially nobody wants to admit what's going on. But that leaves us with a huge question.
Yeah.
What are the real implications of these sightings, especially in such a tense place?
I think that's the crux of the matter. And it leads us to the next layer of this enigma. You were particularly interested in the theories surrounding these sightings.
Right.
So let's dive into what your sources had to say. So some people think aliens are drawn to this geopolitical hotspot, for some unknown reason.
Right, like they're observing our behavior during times of conflict.
Exactly. Or maybe they're drawn to the energy generated by the constant military presence.
It's like they're getting a front row seat to the human drama.
Yeah.
Okay, but then there's a more grounded theory
Right.
that these sightings are actually secret military experiments. possibly advanced aircraft being tested in secret.
That's plausible, especially considering the DMZ's strategic importance
Ah.
and the history of military advancements being kept super secret.
And you actually sent us an article from a military journal
Yeah.
analyzing how these unidentified aerial phenomena could disrupt early warning systems.
Right, and that ties directly into this whole DMZ situation.
Right. And that raises the question of whether these sightings, intentional or not, are contributing to the tension in the region.
Absolutely. Imagine being a soldier stationed at the DMZ, trained to identify any potential threat.
Yeah.
And then you see these unexplained objects in the sky, things that defy your understanding.
Right. Things that completely go against your training.
Exactly. It would add a whole new level of stress
Oh, yeah, for sure.
and uncertainty to an already high-pressure environment.
And that uncertainty could lead to, like, miscalculations or heightened anxieties,
Exactly.
even a trigger-happy response
So absolutely.
in a situation where clear thinking is so crucial.
Right, so we're talking about the possibility of these sightings, regardless of their origin, actually escalating tensions in the DMZ.
Yeah, it goes way beyond simple curiosity at this point.
It really does, and it underscores the importance of open communication,
Yeah.
not only between North and South Korea, but between governments and their citizens.
Because if everyone's just operating in this fog of, like, speculation and fear,
Yeah.
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, precisely. And that brings us back to something you mentioned earlier about the potential impact of these sightings on military operations and diplomacy.
Oh, yeah, one of the things I sent you was a report from a think tank,
Mhm.
and they specialize in international security.
Yeah.
They argue that these unexplained aerial phenomena are a huge challenge to global stability,
Right.
especially in regions like the Korean DMZ.
Yeah, where the stakes are already so high.
We've talked about espionage and potential diplomatic incidents,
Yeah.
but what about the possibility of these sightings triggering a new arms race?
I mean, it's definitely possible.
Yeah.
Nations scrambling to develop technologies to counter these unknown threats,
Right.
leading to an escalation of military spending and, further destabilization of already volatile regions.
So we're not just talking about the potential for misunderstandings in the moment.
Right?
We're talking about the possibility of these events having a ripple effect
Yeah.
that could impact global security for years.
It's true. That's why it's crucial to approach this topic with a balanced perspective,
Yeah.
acknowledging both the unknowns and the potential risks.
It seems like these UFO encounters in the DMZ represent a convergence of so many different elements.
It really is.
Military strategy, international relations,
Yeah.
the human fascination with the unknown.
Absolutely.
It's almost overwhelming to think about.
Yeah, it really does make you realize we're dealing with something much bigger than just a few isolated incidents.
And yet, despite all these complex implications, there's something profoundly human about our fascination with the unknown.
Absolutely.
It's this inherent curiosity,
Yeah.
this desire to understand our place in the vastness of the universe that keeps us looking up and wondering.
It's true.
As we've been discussing these UFO encounters in the DMZ, it struck me how the location itself adds another layer of symbolism to the whole conversation.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
The DMZ embodies division conflict, a world literally divided. Yet it's also a place where we're confronted with something that potentially unites us, a shared sense of wonder in the face of the unknown.
Yeah, I love that. It's like those UFOs, whatever they may be, are hovering over this symbol of human conflict, almost as if they're trying to send a message.
Like, hey, down there are bigger things to worry about than your differences.
Exactly. It's a cosmic wake-up call, urging us to look beyond our divisions and consider the bigger picture.
Maybe that's part of the reason I was drawn to this topic in the first place.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions, expands our perspectives, and reminds us that there's always more to learn.
Maybe that's what these deep dives are all about, embracing the unknown and realizing that we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. But I have a feeling this is a topic that will continue to fascinate and intrigue us for a long time to come.
I agree. And who knows, maybe one day we'll have those answers. Or perhaps the real journey is in the questioning itself.
That's a great thought to leave us with. To our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of UFOs and the Korean DMZ. We encourage you to continue exploring this topic, to seek out new information, and to always keep an open mind.
And remember, sometimes the most profound discoveries come from asking the questions we don't yet have the answers to.
Until next time, this is The Deep Dive signing off.